Motivation in Motion. Own your moment and get better today.
All right, Coach, if you'll introduce yourself a little bit and kind of take us down where you started your coaching career.
Okay, I'm Hubbard Jr., born here in Oklahoma City. I started my coaching career at Millwood High School.
Okay.
Leotis Robinson hired me. Mm-hmm. I was visiting different churches at the time, and this particular morning, he came up to me. I knew Leotis. He came up to me after church and asked me what I was doing. And I told him I was finishing up my degree, and he said, I'd like to talk to you about coming on staff. So I came on his staff. He hired me, and I worked at Millwood for 10 years.
Okay.
Enjoyed it, had great relationship with the coaches and with the students. And then Chuck Bowman called me. He called me one morning, and he said, Robert, Bill Blankenship is taking the head job at Edmond Memorial. Why don't you give him a call? He's still trying to hire someone. I said, well, I know Bill. I don't know him personally, but I've met him. He said, well, just give him a call. So I did, and he asked me to come up. We talked on the phone for a bit, and he asked me to come up. So I came up, we talked, and he said, come with me. He took me over to the office, and I met Mr. Maxwell, the principal. And he just told him then in front of me, he said, this is who I want. And Mr. Maxwell said, well, you know, someone else is coming in to be interviewed. He said, yeah, but this is who I want. And so they hired me then, and then we went to visit the athletic director, Mr. Nick, and he introduced me. And that's when I started coaching here at Memorial. I was here for 4 years, and I don't mind telling you, I became a Blankenship disciple. I learned a lot from Bill about coaching and dealing with students. And I always wanted to be a coach ever since I was in junior high, because the coaches that we had at Moon Junior High School at that time, back in the early 60s, mid-60s, they always talked about character. They always talked about class. They always talked about doing the right thing.
Okay.
And frankly, that's something that I'm missing now. I don't see that a lot now. I think a lot of the coaches are just worried about winning. All they want to do is win.
Yeah.
But it's more to it. I think it's still more to it than that. I think there are life lessons to be learned. And I think I still think about those men that coached me. Coach Green, Coach Hazley, Coach Higgins, Coach Watkins. They were disciplinarians. And now we won basketball, track, and we lost some good athletes, but they would give them 2 or 3 chances to turn their lives around. But they fell into the world. And we still won. We were still able to win. So that let me know if you do it right, you can still win.
Yeah, I've only lost my cool in the headset in the last few years, and it's interesting you say that. It was a phrase. I said, I refuse to be on this staff if we're going to do it this way. And the words that were coming back, I said, I'm not going to be about a compromise on this. If we're going to win this way, I don't want to win this way.
Yeah.
And I love that standard. And that standard was about because of the men that had coached me, right? And you're part of that, right?
Well, thank you.
And so it's awesome to see that, and I'm just blessed that you're here. So take me now. So you go from Memorial, and then you go start your own tree, if you will.
Yeah, and I went back to Millwood.
Right.
They hired me. I was there for 2 years. And the year before, they didn't do very well.
Okay.
And a lot of people were disappointed. Well, we got back up. We didn't go to the playoffs, but we did have a better season that next year. I stayed at Millwood for 2 years. And then John Odell called, and we got to talking, and he was looking for someone with FCA. And I've always wanted to be a part of FCA. I had FCA in Millwood when I was there the first time, but when Bill Kreischer came and spoke to us, I think it was my junior year, it really impressed me to have a ministry like that in athletics. And none of our coaches stepped up at that time. And I just told myself, if I ever get a chance to coach, to be a head coach or just an assistant coach, I want to start an FCA chapter at my school. So John hired me, and I worked for FCA for 3 years, and one of those years, my last year, I was the chaplain at OU.
Right.
Loved it. I went to an FCA camp up in Estes Park one time, and a gentleman from Colorado State spoke.
Okay.
He was a team chaplain. I said, man, I'd love to do that. And I got an opportunity to do that. I was actually just filling in for someone.
What year was that, Coach?
That was
Do you
in
remember?
'98.
Okay.
That was in '98.
I was a counselor that year. I'm almost sure of it.
Okay.
At FCA camp in Estes Park.
Yeah.
So I served as a counselor in '97 and '98, I think, because I had a special needs kid of all places from Edmond, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Put in my huddle.
Yeah.
It's just a small world. It was funny. I'm sorry. I was thinking about that, of how many different times our paths has crossed.
Yeah.
And
We go back 30 years.
Don't tell me.
At least.
Coach, I'm not that old. We were just on campus just recently.
Hey,
Let's just leave it
hey.
at that. But I do always remember passing you. And then I remember you, when I was at OU, helping a lot with the chaplain and doing that stuff. And I knew that faith was always so important to you.
Oh, yeah.
But I do remember, as we were sharing before we started, is just this standard, and you were never going to waver from it.
You know, I was raised by a single parent. My mother raised me.
Okay.
And she loved me. I loved her, but she was tough. My mother was very strict. And some of that I learned from her.
Okay.
My work ethic, I learned from her. And things that she taught me when I was younger. I still think about those things. And I know my wife told me here not too long ago, you know, your mother, and this is not to shine any light on me, but I appreciated what she said. She said, your mother did a great job with you. And I really thanked her for that. And, you know, the kids that we see today, Todd, are different from the students that you went to school with. They're faced with so many obstacles, you know, and they need someone that can really just talk to them, teach them, let them know, and understand that they are worth something.
Yeah.
They have a value. Some of them don't feel like that. I've talked to teachers that have given kids a ride home, and they'll tell them, stop right here at the corner, because I don't want you to take me to my home, because they're ashamed of what they may see. So, you know, you try to talk to your kids in the classroom. You kind of coach them up in the classroom and make them understand, hey, you're worth something. You have a value. And I would like to see more of that out of some of the younger coaches that are out there also.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was so blessed by the men, and including you, that were around me. I got that value from my coaches. It's not to take anything away from my parents or the upbringing that I had. It was just I got to start seeing some modeling of some characteristics that I wanted to adopt.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that I thought was always interesting about you was your intensity and attention to detail around that, but I never felt like it was personal. And one of the things that I see right now with coaches is I think they feel like they have to coach and it becomes personal. And what I mean by that is they're attacking the young man as opposed to go ahead and galvanize him with discipline and respect and value, and they'll do anything for you. And I think some coaches could use a class on the art of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think they think, well, if you're one of these disciplinarians, then by golly, it's this, or it's the highway. Actually, I would say the men that have been the hardest on me have also been the ones that gave me the most grace.
Yeah, I understand.
Right?
Right.
Because that was the balance between it. It's like, okay, Todd, you're late from lunch. I'm going to make you pay for this. But then after that was over, we were back. Grace had been happening, right?
Yeah.
And I never felt like, Coach Hubbard doesn't like me, or I didn't feel, but I do feel like that's one of the things when I go to clinics and stuff, or team camp is one of my favorite things to observe these days.
Yeah.
And you watch a staff and you watch a culture and you watch a young man tuck his head and walk away from that coach. And you're like, man, they're missing an opportunity. That kid's, he's disappointed that he disappointed you and you don't see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the irony, that we've got to somehow, through these stories and conversations and experience, we got to pass those on.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is an art form. And if you didn't learn it from someone else, would you have coached differently?
You know, when I was coming up, there were coaches that you read about and saw all the time, people like Vince Lombardi, Eddie Robinson. coaches like that, and the one thing that appealed to me was that they were Christian coaches. They were successful, but they always had an audience for God, and they introduced him to their students, their athletes. And, you know, the kids that I had in FCA 30, 40 years ago that I still have relationships with. They call me, you know, we visit one another, you know, and that's something that if you do it right, you build on that, and you have an impact on kids. And when I was coaching, that was all I wanted to do, was to help kids. I wanted to be the type of coach that I did not have, okay? And I had an example with Bill, you know, some of the other men that I've coached with, and I just wanted to help kids and just let them know, hey, look, you have a value. You're worth something. No matter what you're going through, you still are someone. Some of them get it. Most of them get it. Some don't.
Yeah, I think I don't really know what God's journey is for these conversations, but one of them that I want to come out of it is like, could we take a tool chest of wisdom and at least share it so that maybe men and women think about that? Because what I've always loved about Scripture is that you could have a positive word or a negative word.
Right.
But the reality is it's how that person heard it. And I think great coaches see, right, that behavior, and they know how to get those individuals. And it is, and I think it's, you got to be around great men and women in your sport, right? And so one of the reasons that I love that, you know, 17 Ministries bought this idea with John Odell and his dad was, I think he loved being an 8th grade football coach, right?
Yeah.
And the impact that he made on those men, future men, right, at such an age. And I think, you know, everybody always asks this question, if I could give you any job, what would you have? And I've actually always teased about that. I was like, I think I'd just go coach 8th grade football.
Really?
Yeah, because I think there's a transition point from that point in their life, right, to the next journey. And I think about my 8th grade football coach or my high school coaches and that impact. And that's why I've never really had a desire or passion to coach in college. Was not that I didn't have great coaches in college. It was, I just thought there was an impact made on me. You made an impact on me. I don't know if I'm late back from lunch very often. I don't know. You have to ask the people at work. But I do remember those disciplines. Talk a little bit. Now I know your story because you shared it many times. Talk about your testimony and the parallel of your calling to be in coaching.
Let me share something with you. And you never know what you're going to say to a young man or a young lady that's going to have an impact on them. One of my kids was in the 9th grade, and it was my last year in Millwood. He was a receiver, and every time I would throw him a pass, he would miss it. He kept coming back, Coach, I never could catch. And I got tired of hearing that. I said, Ed, stop telling me what you can't do and tell me what you can do. Okay? And I left, went to Memorial. About 2 years ago, I saw him at a Millwood basketball game. And he went to college. He's graduated from college. He was in the Army. He saw me and he ran down the steps. You know, death and life is in the power of the tongue. He ran down the steps. He said, Coach, you saved my life. And the only thing I could say was, well, thank you. And somebody else called him. He ran back up the steps. So that stayed on my mind a long time. And I didn't know how to get in touch with him, so I called his position coach. I said, Lim, do you have Edward Marshall's telephone number? He said, yeah, Coach, here it is right here. So he texted to me. I said, Ed, what did you mean when you said I saved your life? He said, well, Coach, you remember when I was in the 9th grade, I couldn't catch anything. I went, got a scholarship to college, and I was in the Army. He said, I was sent out on a scouting expedition on assignment one day, me and my team, and we got caught in a firefight. This is in Iraq. And we got pinned down, and they kept coming. And I told all of them, I said, we've got to get out of here because they're still coming. So let's go get everything together, and we're going to run out of here. He said he turned around, and there was a girl behind a large rock. He said, come on, we got to get out of here. She said, no, I'm safe back. He said, you have got to go because I'm not going to leave you here. I'll die with you, but you have got to go and get yourself together. Stop telling me what you can't do and tell me what you can do. Let's get out of here. So he said he got herself together, and both of them ran out together. He said every year on that date, she calls him and thanks him for saving her life.
Wow.
And so you never know what you say to a young man that stays with him.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, even some of my conversations with my father late in life, where he was telling me a lot of the same things my coaches were, but just wasn't listening, too stubborn, right? And so to hear something sometimes from another voice, we hear it differently, right? And I think we forget that too. And I think, you know, you've had an opportunity. I think one of the greatest things about a coach is sometimes you get to stand in the gap, right? I pray that every kid that I coach, that they have a family of faith and that they have both parents. But unfortunately, that's not what I see, right? And so I think sometimes as coaches, we get to stand in that gap and just hold that line for that individual until they find their way. And I think that's been such a privilege to me. And I know it came from a long thing of watching people like you.
I've said this before. I think coaching really is a calling.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that want to do it, but there are some people that just kind of have a gift to do it. That's what God has laid on them. And you know, I use a lot of scripture when I talk to people sometimes. And God knows what he wants to do for you. One of my favorite scriptures is Ephesians 3:20. Now unto him is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think. And when you think about that verse, you can pray for something and you think you know what you want, but God can do exceedingly more than what you expected. And that's happened to me several times. That's happened to other people that I know. But it comes down to just having faith in God and knowing that he wants the best for you.
Yeah. You know, I think one of my favorite stories for you that you told us back in FCA Huddle back in high school was a story about the eagle and the way that they attacked the storm.
Yeah.
And I still remember that to this day, right?
Yeah.
Right. I probably won't tell it as well, but right, you know, when that type of animal and great creature, right, sees the storm, what does it do? It flies directly into it, so it hits a trajectory and it goes above the storm.
Right.
Right. And I remember that, and I'll never forget that story. And I've had some moments in my life where you're in a storm and you're like, you know what? I can either go right into this and let God take me above it, or I can let this thing run right over me.
Right.
Right. And I always loved that story. So I love coach stories for sure. We got to see each other at clinics over the years. We've seen each other, which has been a blessing. If you were to continue to go down the road of just encouraging the men and women that are doing this, what's another thing that you would tell them outside of a calling? Because I think a lot of people with faith hopefully are doing God's will in their calling, but they still get discouraged.
Oh yeah, that's part of any job. But you just have to keep your eyes on what you're doing. When I first got into coaching, and my wife laughs at this when we talk about it. I was a GA at Langston, and our first day of practice, they had just hired a new coach. My first day of practice, we didn't have coaching uniforms or anything, but I'm sending these kids through these different drills, and when one kid said, "Coach, so and so and so and so," when, believe it or not, when he said "Coach," something went off inside of me, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I'd always wanted to be one.
Interesting.
But when he called me a coach, I didn't even have the attire. I thought, oh, you must be doing something right because they're getting something out of this. And for him to call me a coach. So a person knows what they're supposed to do, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I could tell you so many times in my life, during probably the hardest 3 years of my life, the last 3, I feel like I've ignored my calling. Even though I've coached on campuses, I've always done it part-time. I've never made it a full-time passion.
Okay.
And I think God's honored that, and I know that I've had an impact. But I've watched other men like yourself and others that have done it full-time, and I wonder what the impact would have been if I did it all the time. And so that's where I'm asking for courage and grace and things as I kind of go into this next life, because I want my daughter to go, I am 100% sure I knew what my dad was put here on this earth to do. And if I keep doing what I'm doing during the day, I'm not sure that comes out. And so one of the best conversations I had right here with one of the coaches, his pearl of wisdom was, if you're doing your calling, you'll have never worked a day in your life.
That's right.
No matter how hard it is.
That's
and
right.
so it's incredible. We've had so many stories and so many conversations that I've had to this point, and all of you guys have a very similar theme.
Mm-hmm.
You're not working, it's your calling.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about FCA.
Okay.
So many of the men that have said on this have talked about Chuck Bowman and John Odell. Is there a story about that you have at your time at FCA that you lean on still to this day?
It would probably be when Bill Kreischer came and spoke to us. I didn't know who he was.
Okay.
Chuck Bowman was the one who told me who Bill was. He was All-American at OU back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he laid it out for us and explained it to us, I knew then that I wanted to be a part of it. And Gary Lauer was the gentleman that was representing Oklahoma City at that time. Gary came in, and when he was the one that helped me start the huddle. And he was just, everything I asked for out of him, any kind of help I needed, he was always there.
Wow.
And I've always loved being a part of FCA. It's a ministry that, you know, it's wide open, and it's not afraid to talk to students, coaches about whatever they're going through, or even what religion they're in.
Right.
You know, and I've always admired that about FCA. But it's a ministry that has blessed me, it's blessed my family, and I've just enjoyed doing it.
Now, you're still teaching, right?
Yes.
Now, I did read about you're teaching at the same school your daughter's teaching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, does she coach?
No, she didn't coach, and
Okay.
she was there. She's not there now.
Okay.
But she did and I kept telling her, I said, Mauri, why don't you go into administration? Because she was really good at what she did. And she always wanted to get into law enforcement because her major was corrections.
Okay.
And then when an opportunity opened up for that, that's when she kind of gravitated to that. But she was a great teacher. But I didn't know you saw that article.
Coach, I gotta work hard. I gotta study up. Let's do this. If you were to give me a piece of advice as I transition into full-time coaching, what would it be?
Be prayerful about it every day. Just ask God to direct you, guide you, and give it your best. You know, always study, always prepare, always be prepared for something new or different every day. And just kind of feed into your kids, talk to them, encourage them. I mean, let them know how well they're doing, even if it doesn't look that well. Encourage them.
100%.
Don't let them drop their heads. And that's what I did with my kids. I had kids that, you know, they weren't that good, but if they did anything, the best that they could do, I would always encourage them. And then the next day they'd come back and it's like they did it overnight. They would work harder.
Okay.
So that's what I would tell you to do.
If I could ask you one last question, what would your family tell about your coaching career?
That I enjoyed it, and they may think it was too long, you know, but that I did enjoy coaching, and I did my best with it, and I tried to, and I hope I had a positive influence on my athletes.
Oh, I know they do. I'm sure that I can't imagine the men and women that have come in and out of your home that your family's got to see that the impact that you've played on. So I know you have a tremendous amount of humility in your faith, but I know that you're making an impact because I hear those stories. So I want to say thank you, and I appreciate you, Coach. And I love you, and I hope you stay after helping me encourage. Let's keep finding these good men and women that will do it the right way.
I will. I love you, Todd. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you, brother.
Take care.